We are back. Football Manager 2020 is here, and this is the first FM20 experiment. I hope you're looking forward to this one. So today's experiment is pretty simple. You've seen the thumbnail, you've seen the title. We're going to be simulating 100 years into the future in FM20, and we're going to see what happens in those 100 years. Now, because FM20 is still in beta phase, it means we haven't got access to the pre-game editor or the in-game editor yet. But it doesn't mean we can't simulate things and see what happens just naturally without changing anything. So that's exactly what we're doing here today. Hopefully, by the end of this 100 years, we're going to see a completely different Football League makeup. Now, for the purposes of being able to simulate 100 years in the future in relatively quick time, I've only got the English leagues loaded up, purely because more than 50% of my subscriber base is from England, so I imagine that's kind of what they're most interested in. However, if you like this kind of experiment and want to see more of it, comment down below which leagues you want to be seeing in the future, and leave a like on the video to let me know that you've enjoyed this one and you want to see more 100 year in the future experiments. Although I do promise you, you won't have to wait 100 years in the future for those experiments, I promise. Now, before we get into things, it's prediction time. And my first prediction is that I think that Manchester City and Liverpool, they're going to win at least 40 titles between them in the next 100 years. I just can't really see that not happening. I think they're two good sides, and they'll sort of stay very good for the first 50 years at least before things start to change. I'm also going to make the bold prediction that Arsenal and Tottenham, wherever they are down there, neither of them are going to win a Premier League title. I don't think either of them will. I think they'll always be in the top half maybe, but never win a Premier League title. My next prediction is Leeds United. They will never ever reach the Premier League in the next 100 years. I don't think they'll do it. We can check it obviously, of course, but I don't think Leeds are going to do it, despite what everyone may think and Leeds fans may think. It won't happen. Into League One, and I think Portsmouth, I think they'll spend most of their time in League One. A lot of people seem to think they'll return to the top, and they may well do in real life, but in this simulation, I think Portsmouth will spend most of their next 100 years in League One. Of course, Lincoln City, my team, are in League One, and I'd love to say they're going to go on to the Premier League. I think it's more likely they'll be in the National League come the end of this, so hopefully they don't drop down, but that's kind of my prediction for Lincoln City. And if we move into League Two as well, Salford City, I reckon they are going to be in the Premier League very, very soon. I think within the next 20 years, they'll get Premier League and probably stay there for the rest of the experiment. If we look at the National League, it's a very difficult league to get out of. Once you're out of it, it's very difficult to stay in League Two. So I think we'll see a lot of yo-yo clubs, but I think the biggest yo-yo club is actually Boston United in the Vanarama National League North. I think they could be the biggest yo-yo club between the National League and League Two. That's my prediction at least. And they're on predictions, so that's what we've got down. Leave your predictions down in the comment section as well, and we can see what happens. Now, before we start this mammoth simulation into the future, you may have heard me say hashtag TomFM20k, because I've got this very ambitious goal to get to 20,000 subscribers by the 1st of January 2020, and I need your help to do it. I need you all to subscribe. I need you all to share the videos with your friends and tell them to watch it and subscribe. And as a sort of reward for that, so we're going to be giving away a copy of Football Manager 2020 at every 1,000 subscriber milestone, starting at 13,000 subscribers. We are well on our way to that. We've had loads of entries into the giveaway, and if you want to enter the giveaway yourself, enter it in the link in the description. Once we hit 13,000 subscribers, I'll do a draw, and then we'll start the next giveaway for 14,000 subscribers, all the way up to 20,000 subscribers. So there's plenty of chances to win a copy of the game. You just have to keep sharing the videos, keep telling your friends to watch and subscribe. And as long as people keep sharing and more people start coming along, I think we'll do very, very well. We'll reach that goal, and I'll have to give away plenty of copies to you guys for your help and efforts in getting me to 20,000 subscribers. So I'm going to go on holiday indefinitely right now. I'm not entirely sure how long it's going to take to simulate 100 years in the future. For you, it's going to be a few seconds. For me, it might be a few days. I'm not quite sure. I'm about to go to bed and leave it running overnight, basically. But I'm probably going to have to do that a few times. So for my efforts, please go and click subscribe. I'd love it if you could do that. That would be absolutely fantastic. Leave a like, drop a comment down below, and I'll see you in 100 years' time. So we're back. The year is 2120. It's taken a while, specifically 3 days, 3 hours and 16 minutes to simulate, constant simulation to get to this. Luckily, this past weekend, well, luckily in some sort of way, luckily, I've been very busy this weekend, which means I can't play Football Manager, but it means I've had to simulate this all weekend because I've not been at my computer. So it's been running all weekend, doing its thing for 3 days, 3 hours and 16 minutes. And we are finally here, 2120, 100 years in the future. I am really actually quite excited about this. I think this should be pretty decent. Before we get into it though, I don't normally give away save files for experiments, although this year for FM20 I've got a Patreon, and one of the perks in the Patreon, if you contribute to a certain level, you will get access to absolutely every single experiment database, whatever I use to get into things, to make experiments and stuff like that. But because this one is the first one, and it's quite an impressive one, all the way 100 years in the future, and I know a lot of you guys are going to be interested, there will be a link in the description which will take you to a Google Drive page where you can download this and play it yourself 100 years in the future. So if you want to start 100 years in the future, you can do. But also whilst you're there, if you want to check out the Patreon as well and get yourself prepared for future experiments, we're going to be having loads of experiments this year, so if you want to get access to all those, check out the Patreon as well. Right, well, first things first, the Premier League. Does this look any different to real life? Actually, there are a few different teams in here to real life. So we've got teams like Barnsley, Blackburn, Brentford, they're up there, Derby are up there, Millwall, Nottingham Forest, Portsmouth. But other than that, actually, a lot of teams there still the same. A lot of the big teams, Tottenham are still there, Arsenal still there, Chelsea still there, Liverpool, Man City, Man United. We'll see if they've been relegated and things like that. But first of all, we want to look at the Premier League winners over the past few seasons. I said that Liverpool and Man City would get at least 40 between them, and that Arsenal and Tottenham wouldn't win a single one. So let's look at the past winners then. We'll scroll all the way down to the very first few seasons. You can see here in yellow, this is where we start here. White is real life, yellow is a simulation. So we start off with some good wins for Liverpool and Man City, getting plenty of titles in those first few seasons, especially Man City, but Man United win quite a few. Already one prediction has failed because Tottenham have won a Premier League title, and actually Arsenal up here as well have also won a Premier League title. But I'm very surprised to see Man United doing so well, winning so many titles. But the first biggest shock I think I've seen from this initial screen is that Brighton have done extremely well. Within 10 seasons or so, they come third in the Premier League, they come third a few times, second a few times, and then in 2046-47 up here, they win the Premier League for the very first time. We're going to win it a couple times in a row, actually, which is pretty decent going. Arsenal again winning a few titles, but Man City keeping things up. Surprised that Liverpool have only won 2 so far. I thought we'd see Liverpool, or 3-4, sorry. They thought they'd win a few more titles than that, but Brighton and Arsenal, the mid-2050s to 60s, they seem to be the dominant two sides. It's Brighton and Arsenal. And then Watford. What is going on? Watford getting on the axe. And from 2067 to 2075, Watford win it every single season. Fair play to Watford, a dynasty being born there. Second places for Man City and Brighton and a few decent teams there. Watford then start to lose it out to Brighton and Tottenham, but Watford's still up there. Watford have been so successful in recent years, with Blackburn winning a title as well, which is great to see already. Blackburn getting themselves up there. A great team they are. Arsenal go on a little dominant streak towards the end of the 2000s. Then we win the new century, and it's very much Blackburn's in the early 2100s before it starts going back towards Manchester and Liverpool. I think by looks of things, if we look at how many titles Man City have won in their history, they've won 29, and have they won 3 or 4 in real life? Either way, they've won at least 25, I'd say, in this simulation. Liverpool, on the other hand, they've won... now, this is going to annoy some Liverpool fans. Is it 18 they've won in real life? They've only won like 5 more or so at least. So... Liverpool and Man City haven't won 40 titles between them, which I thought they might do. So 2 out of 2 predictions are wrong so far. That is crazy though. I am so impressed with Brighton, Watford and Blackburn. Really good progress. I mean, Brighton have stayed up there for such a long time as well, because they're still winning titles there. And they won their first title back in the 2040s. So they've done well, to be fair, Brighton. Let's have a look down at the Championship then. Any big teams? I mean, Everton are there. That's quite a big team for the Championship, I suppose. Leeds are still there as well. We'll see if Leeds have been in the Premier League at all. I said they wouldn't get to the Premier League at all. Southampton are down there, but some teams coming up like Wickham and Southend and Port Vale are up there. MK Dons are up there as well. So some few teams coming up, a few teams coming down as well. We'll look through some of the past winners if we go all the way back down to real life. This will be quite interesting clip. We'll show what kind of clubs have been relegated as well as promoted, and relegated from the Premier League, that is, I should say. Leeds actually runners up in that first season. So already we have seen, and they've won the playoffs a couple of times as well. So 3 out of 3 predictions are already wrong. We don't need to look at Leeds' history because we know they've been in the Premier League, just not the current season, or they've won the Premier League, of course. But plenty of different winners, ranging from Forest to Newcastle to Leicester have dropped down, and obviously West Ham have dropped down, and Palace have dropped down. So a lot of team, Watford dropping down. Everton have obviously been in the Championship quite a bit because they got promoted here in 2042. Interestingly, Liverpool and Chelsea had both been relegated. I presume they got relegated the same season in the 54-55, because the 55-56 season, both Liverpool and Chelsea promoted as winners and runners-up. So that's interesting. Obviously, very tough times for Liverpool in the 2050s. That's really interesting. Even more interestingly, Manchester United had been relegated after they won all those Premier League titles. 2070s were not a good time for them, as they had relegated twice from the Premier League. Got promoted twice again, obviously, as you can see, but must have been relegated twice to be there in the first instance. A third time here in the mid or late 2080s, they must have been relegated alongside Chelsea, who came third but didn't obviously go up via the playoffs. It took them a while, actually, Chelsea, to get back. Chelsea really have had a tough time because they had promotion here and here, which means obviously promotion, relegation, promotion, those couple seasons. And then they came third another season with another playoff win. So Chelsea, a real yo-yo side for the Championship. And as we keep scrolling up, we see Nottingham Forest mentioned a lot as well. They're a big yo-yo club as well. Palace and Watford in recent years, after Watford had won Premier League titles as well, hadn't they? Which was, I'm sure it was Watford that won a few Premier League titles, wasn't it? 17 of them, so they've had a real tough time in recent years, alongside Chelsea again. That's crazy. League One then. Now, who's still here in League One? Can we see Portsmouth? No, they were Premier League, weren't they? Were they Premier League, Portsmouth? Portsmouth were Premier League, actually. So now we're looking at League One. Let's have a quick look at Portsmouth's history, competition history. We want to see domestic leagues. Or they've been in the Premier League for a long time, and from the 70s to the 20s, that's at least 50 years. They spent a lot of time in the Championship as well. I said they spend most of their time in League One. I think they only spent one season in this experiment in League One, and they never dropped back down. So again, another prediction wrong from me. You love to see it. Going back to League One properly though, Aldershot made their way up there, Birmingham dropped down, Chester are up there alongside Chesterfield and Grimsby. Lincoln City is still there, interestingly. I'm sure they'll drop down at some point. We'll look at those guys in a second. Maidstone are up there, County are up there, Tranmere, Wealdstone, that's the highest ranking team I think we've seen so far, that have obviously risen the most, I should say, from non-league football. So Wealdstone up there, but West Brom have really dropped down as well, which is pretty interesting. Lincoln, let's have a quick look at their competition history in domestic leagues. I said they'd be in the National League at least once, and looking down here, I can see lots of League One and League Two. Is this going to be a prediction that's wrong again, even though it's like a prediction that they go all the way down? Have they dropped down at any point? Vanarama National. Oh, that's 2016. So actually, they never drop out of the Football League in the 100 years when I said they would do. So still, no predictions right yet. Looking through at the past winners, though, we can see what kind of clubs have dropped down here in recent years. I mean, Hull have dropped down pretty quickly. Looking at this, Preston have been down here. Swansea have dropped down as well. Swansea have obviously had a bit of a torrid time. Looking at some of this, looking at teams being promoted. West Brom been down here quite a bit alongside Reading. Hull popping up again. Luton's back down. Middlesbrough's are down. Brentford's and Rotherham's. Swansea and Crystal Palace even dropping down this far as well. That's interesting to see for Crystal Palace. If you're a Crystal Palace fan, you won't be a fan of that, as well as Newcastle fans. Boston United have been in the League One, so obviously they have been up through the leagues. I said they'd be a big yo-yo club. We'll investigate that very, very shortly. Boston even getting promoted to the Championship very recently as well, so good stuff for Boston United. Not too far from where I live in Lincoln, so good stuff for them. What other clubs? No big clubs really dropping down. Southampton, Huddersfield, but not like a Chelsea or a Man United, which I was kind of hoping for. Seeing if they got down to the Championship a few times, I thought they might go down to League One at some point. Bournemouth, I suppose, as well, you can say that's a bit of a shock. But other than that, nothing that major in League One. League Two then, Blythe Spartans are up here, which is good to see for Blythe Spartans if you're a fan of them. Harrogate, Kidderminster back, I should say. They used to be a Division 3 club back in the day. I remember Lincoln City playing them a couple of times. So good to see Kidderminster back there. Spennymoor have come all the way up as well, as have York, which is interesting. Salford, we haven't seen Salford yet, so that's very interesting. Again, let's look at the past winners of League Two to see what's been going on. Right, here we are then. What teams have dropped down? What teams have come up? At this point, we're not seeing Premier League clubs, but we're seeing clubs coming up through the ranks instead. So teams like Dulwich Hamlet are there. I mean, Yeovil on the way back up, I suppose. Grimsby as well on the way back up. Teams like Wrexham as well. Wrexham coming up. Boston, that's probably a big one as well. I don't know why I'm saying Boston quite a lot. You probably think I'm obsessed with Boston. I'm not. It's not a nice place. I wouldn't recommend it. But I like the football team because it's close to Lincoln. It's a bit of a rivalry. That's kind of what I'm focusing on them. FC United, Maidstone, Dulwich Hamlet again, Maidstone, Aldershot, Chesterfield, some teams coming up, which is good to see. Seeing Lincoln here quite a lot, which I'm not too much of a fan of. I'd rather see them up in the Premier League, obviously, but Tranmere as well. So some decent clubs. QPR dropping all the way down to League 2 as well. That's interesting. And of course, most recently, Wealdstone getting promoted and Stockport County finishing up there a few times as well. So that's good to see in League 2. National League then, Altrincham are there, Chorley are there, Dorchester, Dorking, Dulwich Hamlet dropped down, obviously, which is a shame to see. Margate, Shrewsbury have all come all the way down, as have Stevenage, Yeovil still there. Past winners though, I said it was going to be Boston that were going to be the most up and down side. So we'd see Boston in winners or playoff winners quite a bit. As we scroll down though, I haven't seen them yet, but obviously they've been through the ranks at some point because we've seen them in higher leagues. As we look through though, any shock sort of teams coming down? Bradford City are there, which is interesting, I suppose. Scunthorpe United, although perhaps that's not quite a shock if you're a Scunthorpe United fan. You're probably expecting that even this season, maybe to go down to the National League. Teams like Port Vale, Southend, Cambridge, they've all dropped down, especially Southend are now in the Championship, of course. Scrolling up, I'm seeing plenty of teams, but no real standout ones. And to be fair, it's teams like Accrington, they seem to have come around a little bit. Grimsby, they've sort of been bouncing around a little bit. Not Boston, which was kind of what I wanted to see. I thought Boston were going to be the side that were going to do it. Unfortunately, I've seen them maybe go up once, and maybe they got promoted once and have stayed in the Football League ever since then. So, I mean, if you're a Boston fan, that's a good thing. But for me, in my predictions, it's another massive big X. I think perhaps it's more interesting to actually look at the teams that are here in the National League North. So some teams have come up, teams like Banbury, Grantham, Hyde have come up, which is interesting, Prescott, but Salford have dropped down. We'll look at Salford. Obviously, that's one of the teams who said we're going to reach the Premier League. It looks like they've done the absolute opposite. But other teams like Walsall, they've dropped down, Crewe have dropped down, which is really, really interesting in my opinion. These teams have dropped down for some reason. I'm sure there's teams on here as well that have dropped even further. That used to be Football League clubs as well. So we can't see them because there's no actual extra leagues. We can't go any further down than this without a database and things like that. So we can't look any further. But I'm sure there are teams that may have dropped down further. Salford, though, please get to the Premier League. So at least one of my predictions was correct. So look at their competition history. Domestic leagues, if we go all the way down here to the bottom, this is when they got promoted. So League 2, they got to League 1 at one point, and then they dropped down. And they've got that to League 1 at one point, and League 2, but there's no recovery, never in the Premier League. Every single one of my predictions was wrong. You love to see it. And in the Vanarama National League South, then, teams like Barnet have dropped down, Ebbsfleet, as well, I thought they've dropped down a little bit, haven't they? They're in the National League right now in real life. Woking dropped down, but again, they're National League in real life, so it's actually not that impressive. Crawley, though, they've dropped down from League 2, so there we go. There's one team that's dropped down. A few teams coming up, though, which is quite cool to see. Enfield Town, they've come up. Frome have come up. So some good... Cole Shelton as well. If you're a Lincoln City fan, you'll know that Cole Shelton that's one of the darkest days in Lincoln City's history. Carl Shelton away. Before we finish today's episode, though, we'll look at the FA Cup, the League Cup, the Europa League, and the Champions League as well, just at the past winners to see who's won it over the past few seasons. Anyone interesting? So if we scroll all the way down to the bottom, we want to see, are there interesting teams winning it? Teams that you wouldn't expect to win it, perhaps. Southampton is perhaps the first team you maybe wouldn't expect to win it. Watford get in there. Brighton, at this point, Brighton are one of the best teams in the UK at this point, aren't they? Winning all sorts of stuff. So maybe Everton and Forest win it. I think at this point, Everton could have been relegated and Forest maybe only just been promoted. So that's potentially interesting. Burnley, we haven't seen them mentioned too much in this whole experiment either, I don't think. And looking at teams like Norwich, perhaps. But nothing out of the ordinary. Blackburn in their time of dominance won it quite a bit as well. Nothing out of the ordinary, really, is it? Which is a bit of a shame. Looking at the League Cup, the Carabao Cup, again, scrolling up through this, it's nothing out of the ordinary. It's all the same teams winning it. It's all those sort of big teams. I mean, Watford and Brighton going through a bit of a dominant period of winning it, going back and forth. Portsmouth won it at one point. That's an interesting one. Portsmouth in the 95-96 season, but that's perhaps the only kind of shock we may have seen in recent years. Into the Europa League now, because of the way I've set the game up, and of course we've only got the English leagues loaded, we won't see a massive difference in other European sides. So Barcelona are always going to be good because they've not got a league loaded up to actually simulate and change things for them. So Barcelona, for example, I mean, they're in the Europa League here, so that's obviously not too good for them, but all the usual sort of European sides will probably be in here consistently. It's the English clubs that will look to change. The first thing I've noticed, though, is Millwall runners-up in 2037 to Tottenham. That's an interesting one. Brighton, very early on, win a couple of Europa Leagues as well, which is really cool. Brighton really kicked off very well in this experiment. They've done very, very well. Aston Villa have won it there. Everton have won it. Watford have won it. Looking at the runners-up, I can't see any more English sides there. Villa have come runners-up a few times alongside Everton, but Watford's, Man United's winning this. Arsenal's in there a couple of times. So it seems like only Millwall are the only anomaly. Brighton have won it so many times as well. We'll look at Brighton shortly and see what they've won overall, because I think they've been the best team, alongside Watford perhaps, who have done the best. Blackburn runners-up at one point as well, but other than that, nothing massively extraordinary there. As we look at the Champions League as well, scroll the way down to the bottom of this. Right, Brighton must have won us at some point, and they have done. 2035 Brighton won it, which is, I mean, Brighton have just done amazing. Fair play to Brighton. This experiment has been very, very kind to them. They've won multiple Champions League, which is really good. Atletico Madrid and Real Madrid winning it an awful lot as well. Juventus coming runners-up quite a few times. Watford win it 5 times in 6 seasons, which is crazy, with Brighton coming runners-up once there as well. So Watford, fair play to them. Getting runners-up plenty of times as well. So I mean, Watford, one of the best teams in the world alongside Brighton. Blackburn have managed to go and win several Champions Leagues and be runners-up in a few as well. That's pretty crazy, but Real Madrid have won an awful lot. How many have Real Madrid won in total? They've won 28 Champions Leagues now, but how many have Watford won? That's what we want to know. Watford have won 8 Champions Leagues and 17 Premier Leagues. They've won a Club World Championship as well, 13 FA Cups, 10 Super Cups, and 5 Europa Leagues as well, with 12 Community Shields in there, 12 Carabao Cups. And how many FA Cups? Oh, 13 FA Cups. There we go. So Watford have done very, very successful. But Brighton, where are the boys, Brighton? Right, show me this. History, 8 Champions Leagues, 11 Premier Leagues, 3 Club World Cups, 10 FA Cups, 10 Super Leagues, 9 Europa Leagues, 1 Championship, 10 Carabao Cups, 10 Community Shields. Actually, Watford, I think, did better. So maybe Brighton aren't quite as good as I thought they were, but Watford, extremely good. And that is that. Basically, that is that for this experiment. I hope you have enjoyed this one. Of course, link in the description if you want to download this for yourself and explore it fully and see exactly like what managers have won things. You know, tell you that. Let's look at the Hall of Fame very quickly. Who's at the top of the Hall of Fame is Willy Bolly. You love to see that. He's 100 years old now, apparently, and he's still 100 years old, and he's the interim manager for Man City. That's crazy. But either way, you can go through this, have a look yourself, find everything you want to find out. I'm sure you'll find plenty of stuff. And if you want me to do this again with some other leagues, please do let me know in the comment section. Drop a like on the video and subscribe. Of course, help me get to 20,000 subscribers. If you've enjoyed today's video, please share it around with your friends. Tell them to watch it. Tell them to subscribe. Tell them to then share it with their friends. We want to try and get as many people here as possible by 2020, ideally 20,000 subscribers, hence the goal. But of course, you can win plenty of copies of Football Manager along the way. The more people that subscribe, the more chances you've got of winning a copy as well. So let's get on the whole hype train. Let's get this going, and it's going to be really exciting. So thank you ever so much for watching today's video. I hope you've enjoyed it. Have a good one. Goodbye.